Hello everyone, I'm very happy to be here and very nervous, so please bear with me. So yes, today I will talk about something that's not as exciting as the other talks you've seen so far. I will talk about the regulation. The Cyber Resilience Act is an upcoming regulation, but first I'll talk a bit about myself. So my name is Raluca Viziteu. I originally come from Romania. I moved to the Netherlands 7 years ago to do my bachelor's and just never left. And right now I work as a security consultant. I help our clients with everything compliance to a variety of standards and regulations. Okay, let me start with a question that's quite broad. Please raise your hand if you've heard of a digital product being hacked in the past years. Yeah, that makes all of us. The number of cyber attacks targeting IoT devices and digital products in Europe has surged by over 300% in the last decade. That, I admit, might be also because everything needs to be smart nowadays, just like right now everything needs to have AI for some reason. But that's another regulation for later. And there have also been massive breaches, such as the WannaCry ransomware that affected a lot of computers across a lot of countries in 2017. And it exposed major security gaps in products. This is what the Cyber Resilience Act is trying to prevent. It is trying to enforce security by design principles, which could prevent vulnerabilities exploited by ransomware and malware in connected products. Okay, so a bit more information about the Cyber Resilience Act. It was first proposed in 2022. It was approved by the European Parliament in March this year. Then it was approved by the European Council in October, on the 10th of October. If you don't know what that means, after the European Parliament approves a regulation, then the member states need to agree on it, and then it is approved by the European Council. What happens now is that we are waiting for it to be published in the official journal of the European Union, and 20 days after it will be entered into force. And as I said, it aims to improve cybersecurity for products with digital elements. Yes, it is that vague. Sold in the European Union market. As part of its key objectives, it intends to mitigate cybersecurity risks, enforce security by design principles, and enhance consumer trust in digital products. It covers the entire life cycle of digital products, from design and development to post-market surveillance. And, of course, updates. And one very important aspect of it, and why it makes it so hard to be overlooked for the manufacturers, it supplements the existing legal framework for the CE mark for security properties. Up until now, the CE mark mostly targeted the safety aspects, and now it will also target security properties. What is the timeline of the regulation? As I explained, it will enter into force in 2024, probably this month, and then the product manufacturers, importers, and distributors will have 21 months before reporting of actively exploited vulnerabilities and cybersecurity incidents becomes mandatory. What does that mean? They will have 24 hours after a vulnerability was discovered or an incident happened, and in those 24 hours they need to issue a notification to ENISA and preferably also to the users. And then they have a more detailed timeline of how they need to expand on that notification, on that initial notification. that happens after 21 months. This will be, with the current timeline, somewhere mid-2026. Then after another 15 months, the CRA will be in full effect. That means that all of its requirements will be mandatory. So the product manufacturers have a grace period of 36 months before they need to comply with the Cyber Resilience Act. One important difference that I want to make, NIS2 is very popular nowadays. NIS2 is a directive. It needs to be translated into national law. And I noticed in our clients that they treat the Cyber Resilience Act the same. They are like, it will take time before they decide what they want to do with it. No, this is a regulation. It needs to be adopted as it is in the law of each member state. So it applies right away in 2027, not right away, but it applies as it is across all the European Union, and there's nothing the member states can change about it. Of course, there will be implementation acts and delegated acts, but it essentially applies the same all over the place, to not make it more complicated right now. In terms of scope and coverage, the CRA applies to all products with digital elements. That means a lot of products in the European Union market, including IoT devices, network equipment, security products, and software. That's an important one. It also applies to software. It also can apply to open source software, but that's a delicate topic. It only applies to it when it is used in commercial purposes. But that's a hard line to draw. Then, of course, there are also exclusions. And for certain industries, such as the healthcare one, the automotive one, the aviation, and the aviation one, there are regulations already in place that are covering these cybersecurity aspects that the CRA is trying to impose. So for those industries, their sector-specific regulations will apply, and the products that fall within the scope of those regulations won't fall within the scope of the Cyber Resilience Act. And there is also the special category of products that are developed or modified exclusively for national security, defense purposes, or to process classified information. So everything related to national security will not be assessed under the Cyber Resilience Act. There are about 40 requirements in the Cyber Resilience Act. Those around 40 requirements are split into two main categories. The first one are the essential cybersecurity requirements, and the second one, the vulnerability handling requirements. This table is attempting to summarize the requirements the best I could, but they are quite broad and vague, and if you're interested, I advise you to read them in Annex 1 of the regulation. But for the essential cybersecurity requirements, the products with digital elements must be designed and developed to ensure appropriate cybersecurity, protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data, minimize vulnerabilities and attack surfaces, provide secure by default configurations, and enable security updates. Then, for the vulnerability handling requirements, the product manufacturers have the obligation to identify and document vulnerabilities, address and remediate vulnerabilities promptly, provide security updates, and have a coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy. These requirements are as vague as they sound. So there's nothing more specific than that in the regulation, because it is a regulation. So we are waiting for harmonized standards, for guidance on existing standards that can be used to be compliant to the Cyber Resilience Act, because you cannot do something concrete to comply to this as it is written now. What happens if you don't comply? Like, okay, this is the regulation, but what happens if I don't care about it? Well, there will be market surveillance authorities that will oversee compliance with powers to prohibit or recall non-compliant products. That is one of them, but this won't happen as often. The go-to penalty will be the administrative fines. Companies failing to comply with the regulation may face fines of up to 15 million euros or 2.5% of their annual turnover. Quite a lot. And then there's also, the regulation splits the products into three main categories. The first category, and the one that will contain about 90% of products out there, is the standard category. Let's call it like that. Then there are two special categories of products that basically pose a higher cybersecurity risk level. Those are the important products and the critical products. And you have on this slide examples of important products. The important products are further split into two classes, class 1 and class 2. And you can see the examples yourself. In class 1, you would have identity management and access software. In class 2, you would have firewalls. There is a lot of debate on how these products were split and based on which criteria, but these categories might also change in time, but it's an assessment that was done on how high the risk level is for users and for the market. For critical products, the list is more restrictive. There are only three categories of critical products. There are the security boxes, such as the HSM, the hardware devices with security boxes, sorry, that's the actual category, and the HSM is an example. Then you have the smart meter gateways within smart metering systems and smart cards or similar products. These are the only categories for critical products, but there is also another reason why products might be considered critical, and that is if there is a critical dependency on that product of an entity that is essential as evaluated by the NIS2 directive. This is a mouthful. Basically, if you have an essential entity under NIS2 and this product is critical to them, then this product is critical according to the Cyber Resilience Act. Why do the categories matter? So why do we care about them? Because depending on what your product classifies to, you will have different conformity assessment rules. Manufacturers must perform conformity assessments before placing products on the market, and there are different procedures, as I said, depending on the product's risk level. You can do a self-assessment based on an internal control, and that can be done for standard products or for important products of class 1 if a harmonized standard is followed. A harmonized standard that doesn't exist yet. Then for third party, you can have third-party assessments. You can perform third-party assessments for important products of class 1 when no harmonized standard is followed, and for important products class 2. And then you have the mandatory compliance to European certification scheme at level at least substantial. The only one that exists nowadays is the UCC, the European Common Criteria. And that is for critical products. So, these are the rules. It is still not clear how they will be implemented because if you don't know what a harmonized standard is a standard that in its entirety, if you follow it, you will be compliant to a legislation or regulation. So there will be harmonized standards for the Cyber Resilience Act that if you follow in their entirety and you apply to your product, you will be compliant to the Cyber Resilience Act. The efforts for drafting these standards have already started. They also want to reuse standards that have been drafted for the RED directive, for the Radio Equipment Directive. To give you a bit of a perspective on how big the Cyber Resilience Act, the RED directive has 3 requirements. And the Cyber Resilience Act has 40. And there have been 3 standards for the 3 harmonized standards for the Radio Equipment Directive, 1 for each requirement. There will be more than 40 for the Cyber Resilience Act, and they need to draft them in less than 3 years, so manufacturers can follow them. The efforts are enormous. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm skeptical. So what will be the impact on businesses of the Cyber Resilience Act? For small to medium enterprises, they may face challenges in adapting to new cybersecurity standards due to limited resources, but they benefit from simplified reporting and compliance structures. So there is some leniency on small businesses. For large enterprises, they will have to invest heavily in updating security measures across their product lifecycle, but they may also gain a competitive edge through higher cybersecurity standards. There are both opportunities and challenges ahead. Both SMEs and large enterprises can seize the opportunity to strengthen customer trust by aligning to EU-wide standards, though there are challenges, as I said, in costs and in integrating these rules within their organizations. In conclusion, the benefits that we can see from the Cyber Resilience Act, besides the obvious one of having safer products for users that would be more trustworthy. For example, I recently renovated my apartment and I refuse to have anything that might connect to the internet in terms of appliances for obvious reasons. And maybe that will change with the Cyber Resilience Act, who knows. But we will also have strengthened cybersecurity. The CRA sets a robust framework to protect digital products, fostering a secure digital market across the EU. We will have harmonized standards, hopefully, and that means that the Act harmonizes cybersecurity rules, ensuring compliance and trust for customers and businesses alike. And maybe we will have the future-proofing of businesses by aligning with the CRA. Companies can secure their products, boosting trust and competitiveness in the global market. Yes, this was my presentation, and if you have any questions.
Very nice that you're able to make something that's quite boring, not boring. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have questions? Oh, a lot of questions. That's good.
Great talk. Thanks a lot. I was just wondering, is there a US directive or something equivalent to this act? Because I expect this might also result in some global companies going out of the EU market. What is your view?
There is still no US answer to the Cyber Resilience Act. There is a UK one, because UK is not part of the European Union, as we all know anymore, but they do have the UK PSTI, I think that's how it's called. It's a subset of the cyber resilience requirements, because they wanted to align with what will happen in the European Union. I don't think it will be that easy for companies to get out of the European Union market because, for example, for NIS2, it matters where your base office is, and then you comply to those rules, and you can change your head office, and then maybe the rules are different for you. But for the Cyber Resilience Act, if you want to sell in Europe, you have to comply with it, and that's a big market to not sell into.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes. Oh, yeah. No, you're first. Okay.
So you mentioned open source is a very exciting discussion, or it's going to be. I'm not going to ask you how all the specifics. How long would your presentation be if you included open source?
Oh, I think it's a quarter of the Cyber Resilience Act text, just trying to set up some rules for open source software. They try to include it, but it's difficult because they want to assign, for example, a steward that will be responsible for a certain piece of open source software. But that's difficult, and how do you find someone that wants to be responsible for that. And if you want to use it in commercial purposes, because of how the Cyber Resilience Act is structured, you need to have it certified. Otherwise, you can't use it in your product. So it's complicated, and I think they will clarify that by issuing delegated acts in the future. But right now, it's a mess.
It's pain in the ass.
Yeah.
More questions? Yes. Oh, sorry. Who did raise? Perfect. Yeah.
You said something very important. Smart appliances. You choose not to use some. But there are some that you will be mandated to use, like the smart meter. I can develop a very secure smart meter if it's an unlimited amount of money I can push to the consumers. Is there any protection for the consumer in this?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is there any protection for the consumer? Like smart meter, it's an appliance you have to use. You're mandated to use as a consumer. If the organization who develops it says, okay, it cost me 5 billion to secure it, and every consumer has to pay, 10,000 euros for the smart meter, can they do that? Is there any protection for the consumer?
There is. They shouldn't find that founding in the whole idea behind the Cyber Resilience Act is that the consumer is more protected in terms of cybersecurity. The user is more protected. So it's not yet clear how they would enforce that, but it shouldn't be the user or the consumer that pays for this certification. It should be the company. And the way I think they are reasoning with it is that you have the CE mark that you have now for glasses, for products, for safety reasons. And if you don't see the CE mark for security on a product, you don't buy it. I don't know how that would work with smart metering because you kind of have to buy it or you have to use it. So I don't have a definitive answer, but the idea would be that you have to comply or you'll be out of the game.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? We have time for 2 more questions. Sir in the front. Do not make me walk back again, please. That's fine.
Yes, hello. As you mentioned, the scope of the CRA, products with digital elements, is kind of vague. Is there any estimate on the scope of the CRA? How many products are involved in it?
I have yet struggled to find a product that it doesn't apply to. Probably something that has no kind of... Even to firmware it applies, so it's so hard to find something that, I don't know, that chair maybe. But even a keyboard that's connected by wireless and it doesn't connect to the internet, which is an aspect that you take into account with the red directive, if it connects to the internet or not, it doesn't matter for the Cyber Resilience Act. The proper definition of a product with digital elements is that it is connectable in any way to something else. That's very vague and it applies to most products. The upside of that is that if you have a keyboard that connects to your computer in the most basic way, you probably have to go for the most basic conformity assessment and you're done in a day with conformity. A day is very...
Thank you so much for your talk. Hand of applause again. Perfect. Thank you so much.